do Thursdays. And the premise is one guest, 4 questions, 15 minutes, one shot. And, they go over, but the whole idea is to push for that time limit, because we find there's a lot out there. So we just kind of want to grab people as long as we can and make it relevant for the short amount of time there. But I did have Julie, and then I had Toby Cicchini yesterday. And it's
nice.
Funny, the photos I posted of both of them are from these old photos from when we were in Cognac. And I don't know if you remember, but I remember like the last day, the BNIC, part of the deal is like we all got there because all of the chateaus or the Cognac houses paid into the BNIC. And so part of the deal was we, as ambassadors of bartenders and journalists and whatnot, had to show face and go to their houses and learn about, what their cognacs.
Yep.
And I just remember the last day, like Julie being one of the matriarchs, one of the top ladies of our business was like, we're out of here. And a group of us, and I don't know if I think you were with us, but it was you.
I wasn't. I stayed with Doug Frost, Morgan Thaler, and we went off to Meekhoff around the corner.
Oh,
there's only like 5 of us.
Yeah, well, you remember that moment then. There was like, and I just kind of, when I think it's funny, I was like, I saw Julie Reiner going like, fuck, we want to go have a croissant and a coffee in a cafe. And I was like, I'm going to follow that gal. It's like, I'm a new guy. So
if she's doing it, I'm going.
Yeah, we were man. It's really good to see you, man.
Man, I talked to Julie about yesterday because I was like, I actually asked her, I was like, so when was can you remember the time that we met? And she's like, and I knew I'd catch her. And she's like, I'm like, the BNIC summit. I'm like, and I remember it was Morgan Thaler and I flew out at the same time, me from Victoria, him from Portland. We landed in Amsterdam about the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we were sitting at a little bar, and this was before Morgan Thaler was Morgan Thaler. Well, I think like pretty much all of us were these baby bartenders, like Cretina.
Exactly. I mean, not to be humble, but like we were all children in this impending movement that was happening. I mean, it's crazy now. Like I'm looking at all the posts for Tales of the Cocktail, and I kind of go like, wow, this is wonderful. I only know the heads of state. And I feel so blessed to have come up over a decade ago, like right when on the West Coast, because you and I are both West Coast, and I moved out from New York, and there was just a fire was lit, and it was so exciting to be a part of that. And it's wild because now the only time I want to do things is to promote other people's shit or to champion a cause. And everybody puts in their time by getting their chops and doing the apprentice program and doing seminars and just busting butt and going out and staying out late. And I feel like my bandwidth for that has, I want to get up and I want to run the businesses.
Yep.
I want to work on the next project. So it's become a lot more focused as opposed to running around and trying to keep up with everyone.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of wild to see what's going on with Tail.
That event, that was just mental for me, being in Canada for like 2.5 years and sitting with Morgan out at the bar in Schiphol Airport, and we're like drinking a beer and having an espresso shot, and we're like sitting there quietly, and I'm like, I feel like such a fraud. Like, what the fuck am I going to this event? Like, I feel like such a fucking fraud. Like, you land and it's Toby Cicchini, who I've read his book like 15 fucking times.
Yeah, that was fun. I talked to him about that yesterday because I did the show yesterday, and I was like, Toby, I'm not going to mince words here. We did become close friends in Cognac, but because of Cosmopolitan, I feel like I knew you for years. And actually, you put a lot of money in bartenders' pockets with that damn cocktail. I was making more Cosmos than any other cocktail I probably made in my life. Just because at that time I worked on the bleeding edge of Tribeca, like in 99, 2000. It was just crazy. You were just making Cosmo after Cosmo, and we weren't using even fresh juice at the place I was at. We were using Lemon X out of the soda gun. I actually am so happy that I can say that I came from an era where it wasn't like, oh no, we're using fresh juices and this liqueur comes from, and all that is beautiful. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm so glad the industry has come. It has really honed in on the craft of things and also to not make it so difficult. Like, fresh juice. And now there are companies, like I have a company that sells ice and fresh juice just to make it easy for everyone. But, you know, I mean, you know what I mean? Like there was a time when you were slinging drinks, and then there was a time when it got fancy.
It was sweet and sour mix in a fucking pour spout. No date. No, you didn't know how old it was. You just show up on a Friday night to fucking pound out drinks, and there was a bottle of sour mix, and no one knew where it came from or how long it had been sitting in the well.
Yep, so true. And you kind of didn't care. You didn't know to care.
Nope.
You
100%.
didn't know to care. You just loved, and the thing was, there was so much of it was the show, and enjoying the people that were coming in, and creating a party for all of them, and the cocktails. Just at that time, the attention to detail was different. It was different than what what really has taken the industry by storm. I really think in the last decade.
So with my system, I've got people commenting on the live stream as we speak. So
cool.
Dean Callan's already jumped on and commented.
Uh-oh.
Mr. Callan must be up. He must be up late because I'm waiting for mine because it's got to come from the US. I'm waiting for mine to come. So I think it comes probably tomorrow. I'm hoping. This is
what I love what we do in this industry, and that's kind of where my brain's at. Like, you know, when the Brooke Arthur hack came out, like, listen, that's what we have such a facility and an ability and a platform to do, is to help causes. And you know, we all have the charities that we work for throughout the year, events that we do that help to feed kids or to help cure you know, Alex's lemonade stand, no kid hungry. I mean, helping people that we love, fighting you know, in their battle against cancer, giving money to At No Us Without You, which is a LA-based initiative that I've been a part of. It just that's the stuff I love that we have the opportunity to do in our industry.
So when did you get started? Because I was Googling you today just to check up on what book, because you've just got your new book out, which I'm curious at, because I talked to Cara Newman this week as well about books being released during COVID.
That guy. You know, right? That guy right there.
To do book tours and all this sort of stuff. And I noticed you have an IMBD page as well for your acting credits.
Yes.
Was that sort of like the beginning? The issue number one for Eric Alperin was the bartender / actor in New York City.
100%. I did a lot of theater in New York. Did a lot of, like, you know, there's short films up the wazoo, and some TV stuff here and there. It's what I went to school for. And you know, when you get out of it, it's actually interesting because a big part of the narrative of Unvarnished is talking about in the narrative, the main character being myself, about wanting to be an actor, and then kind of being confronted with, okay, well, that isn't always consistent, and choosing at one point when he moves to LA to put down the acting reins and focus more on the bar. But in my life, I when I met Sasha and the Milk and Honey family and started working at Little Branch, that was my Kool-Aid moment. When I got out of school, I worked at the screening room, and you know, I got to work in the Batali Bastianish family and work at Lupa and Teca. So I had some incredible hospitality influences, and so I was always very interested to someday have my own restaurant or bar. And then when I met Sasha, that was the Kool-Aid acid test, and I went, oh, this is how I want to do it, and I want to focus on cocktails. But yeah, I mean, I primarily I was focused on being an actor. I was doing voice work. And it's funny because you think like, I'll be a successful actor and then I'll open a bar and use my own money, and it kind of happened the other way around. So no, I still love acting, and to be honest with you, especially in this time when you're sitting around thinking about all the time you spent behind the bar and what our businesses are going to look like when they reopen, I've definitely meditated on going back to the craft of acting a bit more. So we'll see.
It's an easy metaphor to call. Like, do you think that being an actor by nature just sort of lends itself into being a bartender and having that showmanship and that level of aptitude for always? Because really, actors have the same thing. They're people pleasers. They want to start emotions with the people that are watching them. You feel like bartending is pretty much the same. And how do you fold that in? And with having such a massive mentor like Sasha Petreske as a guide, how have you used that influence to become a mentor yourself?
Wow, there's a couple things to unpack there. Yes, definitely. I think actors were trained to listen, and respond. And I think being behind the bar and good acting is always doing. Always that you're doing. You have activity. So I think being behind the bar is like being on a version of a stage, and you have these activities you need to execute, and you have all these people that you need to juggle, entertain. Everybody's different. Some people want more attention. Some people just want to be taken care of and be left alone. So absolutely, I think the parallel is makes a lot of sense. So my father asked me after I got my degree, and then it wasn't actually so long ago, maybe about like 5 years ago. He asked me, "Do you think your degree in acting helped you in your career as a bartender, bar owner?" And I went, "Absolutely, 100%." You learn how to deal with people and to read behavior. So I I do feel fortunate that I went to school to study acting, and I think it has lended itself in my work as a bartender and a bar owner. Now, in terms of Sasha as a mentor, I ended up at Milk and Honey, and I talk about it in the book for my birthday one year, in my mid 20s, and I'd been working in restaurants, and so I'd been going out around New York and all the different bars and restaurants, and mostly below 23rd Street. But uh, yeah, I saw what he was doing, and I didn't really know him, but I knew some friends who knew him, and after going to Milk and Honey and totally being blown away by the process and the attention to detail. And again, like I'd been bartending, but I wasn't. I don't. I use this term in a way. I wasn't a cocktail nerd, and that I wasn't like buying cocktail books or making my own syrups at that time. And it was really the theater of what was happening at Milk and Honey that turned me on. And so was seeking Sasha out, and I heard that he was opening a new place called Little Branch with a guy named Joe Schwartz, and I just wanted to be there, wanted to be on that team. And I didn't have a huge wealth of cocktail knowledge. I mean, like I told you, I was slinging Cosmopolitans downtown, and then when I was at Lupa, we were making spins on classics with Amaros and with Amaris and Grappas, and so I was getting my feet wet. We were using fresh juices and whatnot, but yeah, I was really just turned on by the style and the theater that I saw at Milk and Honey. And yeah, then met Sasha, and he, in our interview, he's like, "Yep, you're going to come meet the team in a week." And I met the team, and I got trained by Mickey McIlroy and Sam Ross and Sasha. But I think a great mentor is one that has trained his people to be able to train new people. And so in New York, I was a soldier. I was a Milk and Honey family soldier, and Little Branch was the ship that I was at primarily most of the time. And ice and juices and just the building drinks by the round, and the attention to temperature, and the details of how we garnish, where we garnish on the glass. And it just I'm a little obsessive compulsive in my own personal life. So those traits that Sasha imbued in all of us was definitely something that I was turned on by. So at one point, Sasha and I spoke, and he's like, "Oh, you're an actor. You're going to leave and go to LA." And I was like, "Well, LA is something I've always wanted to do. But you ever think about having a bar like this out in Los Angeles?" And he was like, "Yeah, it's come up. There's enough people that are bi-coastal, that go back and forth, that I think would appreciate this style." Anyway, long story short, I went, "I'm going to go to LA. Let's see what we can find out there." And so I moved out there with my girlfriend at the time. She was an actress as well, and just started pounding the pavement, looking for spaces. And we ended up downtown and found our third partner, Sed Moses, and opened up the Varnish. And it took about 2 years, because I moved out there in December of 2006. So 2007, 2008. A lot happened in that time, and then we opened in February of 2009.
Wow, so it's been 11 years for Varnish.
It sure has.
That's
yeah,
amazing.
We just had our it's a very muted. Well, I mean, no, we had an 11-year because we were still open. Actually, I was traveling. I hadn't taken 2 months off, and I don't know how long, but I was traveling. I took a trip by myself around the world,
Oh,
And
wow.
it wasn't planned. So that was just at the beginning of this year. I left on January 4th, and I had a one-way ticket to Melbourne, and I flew to Melbourne. And anyway, from there, I dotted my way across the globe, and kind of watched COVID come
Unfold.
and unfold, yeah, through the news. But yeah, yeah, I wasn't back in LA for our 11 year, but we're 11 years old. Yeah,
That's
and
the-
Sasha's been he's always speaking to me and speaking to all of us that not only work at the Varnish but in the family. Like, yeah,
It's one thing that I always loved about Sasha's philosophy of like knowing that a bartender or bar manager is going to hit a ceiling at one venue and going, okay, well, how do I take you to the next step? And let's back for the next venue, and like sort of grew this empire. And like you said, the Milk and Honey family, where it's sort of, okay, you've maxed out here. Let's think about doing your own venue and going from that.
100%.
So before we go, Stephen Matthews says the book is well written and entertaining, informative, funny, and I live for penny pound ice.
Thank you. That's really cool. Yeah, penny pound is, man, that was a trip starting an ice company, because we were chopping ice in the back out of pans, and we just decided, we're like, you know what? People are starting to ask a lot of questions, so maybe we should start doing this somewhere else where we could potentially start selling some of that ice, and that's how penny pound ice came to be. And now we sell ice and juice, and we've been surviving in this time, but it's been we've had over 270 clients in the greater Los Angeles area, so it's been a very, very successful venture.
Where was the stage? Obviously, you had somewhat of an entrepreneurial spirit when you made the move to Los Angeles and opened up Varnish and stuff. What was the point in your career? A couple of years ago, I'm guessing, but like, what was the point in your career? Is like, I'm kind of done with the bartending thing. I really want to go into the operations and expand and see deficiencies in the business, because LA is a massive city and there's obviously deficiencies, like you said, the ice and the juice. Where was the point? Because you've done, how many venues have you done now? Like, I was looking on your website, you've got like 8-9 venues listed, but I think it's more than that.
That's no, that's aggressive. I mean, the management company that I work with, which is our third partner on the Varnish, he has other bars that I'm not a partner on, but they're managed by his management company, and that company is called Pouring with Heart. But personally, my venues are managed by Pouring with Heart, and I will work with Pouring with Heart. Actually, until everything went into hibernation, I was a director of training for training general managers. But I have, well, really right now there was the Varnish, then Half Step in Austin, Texas, Bar Claxon and the Slipper Clutch back in downtown LA, and then the Streamliner, which sadly will not make it out of this pandemic, but I also opened up a place in the high desert it's by Joshua Tree, so it's a saloon. We opened just about a month ago, and that's called the Red Dog Saloon. So I've got about 5 bars, only one of them open right now, and the ice company. And the ice company really came from it came from Varnish. And I think the switch for me was obviously when you're opening your first bar. I mean, I don't know if you're really, I guess, you're not thinking of yourself as an entrepreneur. You're thinking of like, I want to fucking do this thing and I want to get it open. Yeah, there's got to be a little bit of vanity in that, and I don't mean like a bad vanity, but like, no, I want this thing that I was in love with in New York and that I worked at to exist out here, and so I think the transition came about 2.5 years in, when I spoke to my GM at the time, because I was the GM for the first like year. And then I passed the reins over to Chris Bostic. And then in that time, I was still bartending a little bit at the Varnish, but I was doing the dance that we were doing, the industry dance. I started working for Bar Smarts and doing the BNIC, doing a lot of the trips, which we're so blessed and fortunate to have had those opportunities. But then Chris at one point was like, hey man, I want to move back to Austin at some point, where I was born and bred, and I want to do the Varnish there. So long story short, we went there, we visited, he moved back there, got married. We opened up not a Varnish, although we did fresh juices, block ice. We have our own little ice house in the back. So it's more of a high volume bar with great classic cocktails, some stuff on tap. And I think it was right around then, like right when I knew that Chris wanted to open a place, that I had to not keep giving my 2 shifts away, because I kept doing that. And I was like doing the thing I didn't want to do, or any of my people do. It's like, hey, you got to own your shifts. And then I thought, wow, I'm being hypocritical. I'm not owning my shifts because, oh, I'm the boss. But the boss got to run around and do this shit. And I went, that's stupid. And so I gave up those, I gave up those shifts and just became the beverage director for Pouring with Heart, which at the time was 213 Hospitality. And then that point on was working with the venues within 213 Hospitality, as well as working on the new venues. And so that transition was really like, I couldn't hold shifts. So in my mind, I went, okay, I got to just focus on operations right now.
So Stephen is really watching today. Stephen Matthews, Los Angeles owes you so much. You provide some of the best cocktails, best bars, which has made life so much better. Your contributions mean more, I think, than you realize. Life is better because Eric Alperin is in it. Jesus.
Thanks, man.
Wow, you got some you got Alperin faithfuls out there.
I got some. I got, just as long as you buy the book. Shawn, can you please lift up your book? Because I don't want to do this alone.
I don't even have a copy. I don't even have. Just give me a second.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I really appreciate that. But you know what, man? It takes a village. It really, really takes a village. And I feel like it's going to sound corny, but we all want to do something that means something, right, in our lives. And the idea of being a part of cultural change, I mean, so you sound so highfalutin to say something like that. But I just came to LA at the right time with a great idea. And then what Varnish was something LA didn't have. Varnish had very educated cocktail people, had great bartenders, but it was a continent program, which I found was a bit lacking in terms of cocktails. That's what the Varnish brought. And then it became a family of incredible staff, people super dedicated. And I think it just showed that you could have a classic cocktail bar that had a code of ethics and values, and that really did sweat the details. But we weren't a bunch of assholes. And we did have to beat that shit away with a stick, the whole mixology shit. We all did. The countrywide, where we had to go like, okay, we're not doing this, and we're not like stirring with our pinkies up. I mean, yeah, sure. We all became victims of that, and we all did that shit for a moment. But I think, somewhere along the lines, we either got slapped in the face or we slapped ourselves in the face and went, no, this is about good old fashioned hospitality. Just like, this doesn't have to be pretentious. Just now that we have craft ingredients, great spirits, great liqueurs, fresh juices, good ice, it can exist in a local bar. And so I really think it took the whole city of Los Angeles to jump on that train. So let's do it.
So I'm going to show you mine. You show me yours.
Well, let me tell you something. Yours is bigger than mine. I think. A little bit bigger than mine.
I'm working on my second edition, so another 100 bartenders are going into the second edition. So I'll have 250 bartenders from Canada in the next edition, which is going to be an absolute beast.
Well, I'm going to turn Stephen's laud around to you, man. Like back in the day, like you were the guy from Canada, from Vancouver, just going like, hey, we're doing some good shit up here. Anybody want to pay attention? And I don't know if it was. I feel like Steve Olson always gets a lot of credit for grabbing the heads of state early on from a lot of the cities. I don't know, what you right? Steve was somebody. Did you work with Steve on anything?
No, I've never worked with Steve. I've done some stuff with him with Del Maguey, because I helped bring Del Maguey to Canada back in the day. I fell in love with Del Maguey in 2007 in Mexico. I judged a big agave competition down there. Fell in love with Del Maguey, and so Ron and I started a big, I emailed him, cold called him, how do I get your stuff to Canada? And so I got him a rep and a distribution agency here, which was fantastic. Thanks, Dave. You didn't need to chime in, but so it's interesting now because I'm back behind the bar at Clive's. I actually have taken back over Clive's after a 7-year hiatus, and taken that back over for COVID. So it's been an interesting transition to take my baby back over. And obviously, like you said, culture's changed. So the culture in Victoria is very different than it was in 2013 when I left.
Sure.
And now there's stuff I'm not going to sweat the little things that we used to sweat because you were trying to build this culture up. So now I'm okay, well, we don't need to do that. We don't need to go crazy about that. We can still be really cool. And it's a lot more acceptable now. Like trying to explain to people why you don't do this and this and this, and you don't have this. Now it's like, it's easy.
Yeah, it's funny because I want to share something. We were talking about mentors before, but Sasha at Milk and Honey, it was always like, please, gentlemen will remove their hats. And, it works really well at Milk and Honey because it's a railroad style place. Mm-hmm. Well, now it's Attaboy. Attaboy is like, imagine Milk and Honey's was wearing this really nice gown, and Attaboy just basically like cut off the sleeves and like shorten the skirt. And they're just, I fucking love what Sammy and Mickey have done there. But at Milk and Honey at the time, it was like, yeah, the gentlemen will remove their hats. And Sasha, of course, gets credit for the first bar that had rules, but it wasn't because he was trying to be like, this or that, or like, ooh, we're a secret little speakeasy. He hated that word. He got over it later in life. He's like, whatever, it's a style. But in the end, when we opened up Varnish, it was about like, the rules. And so we scaled those down because it was like, it doesn't make sense, some of these rules. Sure, no star fucking is a good one for LA, but there's others that just don't make sense because you don't have a condo or apartment buildings upstairs. So, and then also the hat thing. I remember Sasha early on saying, like, the first week I'd be running around and be like, excuse me, sir, would you please remove your hat? And we're fucking Los Angeles, man. I mean, look at me. I love wearing hats like this now. So he was like, do you really want to spend your life running around and telling people not to wear hats? So it was Sasha already at that time in 2009 was like, hey, even though this Milk and Honey thing has babies, we got to relax a little bit. We got to relax this thing a little bit. So I think if I were to take Varnish back over, or if I were to open up another place, it'd be like really small. It'd be me and my favorite bar back. And I'd probably be like the cocktail Nazi. I'd be like, there's 5 cocktails. That's it. Nope. No bartender's choice. You get a Gibson, you get a daiquiri, you get a Negroni, you get you get an old fashioned. And then whatever the hell
you only have the ingredients. You only have the ingredients of those things on the back bar. No extras.
100%.
Nope. Nice bottle of whiskey extras. And Fernet, and that's it. And it just 100%. Rotates. Okay, new concept menu. Everything changes on my back bar.
100%. And then then a bottle of Del Maguey for cheekies. So I think it could work.
From the business point of view, because my podcast is really interesting because I have a huge audience of super young bartenders. Like my 18 to 25-year-old demo is pretty strong. But then I also have operators. Then my 38 to 50-year-old demo is really strong. Everybody else in between already knows everything, so they don't really listen too much.
Or they great because they think they know everything. I mean, I'm going to jump in here because like the greatest thing about becoming an operator is creating a space where you can just say, really, how do you do it? What do you think? Because once you do that, that's where the Jedi Yoda thing flips. And I really think you become a Yoda of your world, where you go like, I know so much and I know nothing. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's not giving myself enough credit, but I really don't. I love being told like, no, we're doing it this way now. Or did you try thinking about it this way? Yeah. If we crack the ice like this, it's going to get colder. My favorite part is creating a space where your staff can thrive and can teach you what some of the better ways are. So yeah, the older I get in this business, I like to say the more I learn, and the less I like saying I know. I
call it the 3Ds, democratic drink design. It's like, because everybody, like, especially, I'm sure you find the same thing. It's like New York flavor profiles and sweetness and bitterness and stuff is super different to LA. And so you have a bartender coming from New York and they put an extra bit of sugar syrup in their daiquiris. And you're like, well, LA likes it a little bit more sour. And so then you start like playing around. I just have it like, if every bartender wants to throw down on a classic, they throw down on a classic, everybody makes their variation, and then we go through and taste it. And then we vote on the one, and then that's the spec. So especially when you have bigger teams, I find that just makes it. And then spec is the spec is the spec. And then that's the way it is until someone wants to throw down again. Get a new bartender in. If they want to throw down, they throw down.
Absolutely. I do love that. I think having a system for creativity is important. I find there's so much creativity in figuring out how to nail cocktails 10,000 times over. And so when you get a lot of young bartenders that just want to go, I came up with this amazing thing. And I'm like, you know what? And this is not food. These are cocktails. I'm like, it's really, if it's going to be good, it's going to be some spin on a classic. Okay. And it's got to, at least in my family, it's got to follow some sense of form, like a template that we have. If it's one of the patriarchal cocktails. And I think systems are so important. And I would say to a lot of young bartenders, and this is, pardon me, this is not like a soapbox that I'm getting on, but I found that with so many more cocktail houses, a lot of young bartenders like to jump to the shiny new thing. And what you might gain another set of tools in terms of like, oh, I'm working with like a different family now, a different bar family, and they do things this way. You really miss out on what it means to stick and be loyal to a family and how to grow that and nurture that. And be really, really understand what those systems are. Like I feel like I'm an old man in what I know about cocktails, because I've really worked with the milk and honey method for so many years. And like Alex Day is one of my best friends, and our systems aren't that different, but I'll tell you, our fucking Negronis are different.
Yeah.
It's not a 1-1 family, but the two of us laugh. They're like a 3/4, 1.5. And it's like, okay, great. So you're heavier on the gin. We let it sit mine sits for 10 minutes and yours sits for 5, and then we're kind of in the same zone. But I do think it's really, really important to put in your time in a family. It really, really is. Because then you'll really understand what you're going to need to know when you go and open up your own family. Because it's going to fucking piss you off when you've trained somebody for 6 months and they want to jump to the shiny new thing. And you're like, fine. You're going to lose a sense of, those young bartenders will lose a little bit of respect from the families they've been a part of if they just leave after such a short amount of time.
Yeah, I pulled it back, and actually with my new bartender, because I've never worked with him, he's not sort of in the Victoria bartender family. He's like from outside, came in, been working at Clyde's for a bit, and we've taken it back to like, okay, what's the best, what are we finding the best whiskey and the best vermouth is for our Manhattans? What's the best bourbon for our old fashions? What's the best gins for our martinis? And like playing around with vermouths and everything. And so he's felt like he's been able to have a voice, and we've been able to find a happy place where I like the cocktails we're putting out and he's happy with the cocktails we're putting out, and we've got a set of standards before we get more bartenders in. But with everything you've got going on, how long did it take you to write the book, The Unvarnished? How long did that take?
Oof. Well, I would say the first 3 years, because it took about 5 years. The first 3 years was an on and off process. And my co-author, Deborah Stoll, she's a dear friend of mine. This was a project that 50-50. We were like, we want to write about the bar world. And so it didn't start off as a one-person narrative. It had a couple of voices in it. And so the first 2 years we were proposal. She was in LA, then she was out of LA, and then she was traveling, and then I would go meet up with her for like a week, and we'd hunker down for a week wherever we were, and write. And finally we got a proposal out. We got an agent, Rika Alanik at the David Black Agency, and then spent some more time just kind of dialing in that proposal. Finally, we got to number 10, and Rika was able to sell number 10, which is why I have this, where's my little X? I've got my teeny little X right here, nice. Which is Roman numeral number 10 for like, fuck yeah, we sold number 10. And we sold that to HarperCollins, Harper Wave. And so that took about a year, that whole process of finding an agent, then selling it. And we sold it like right after Anthony Bourdain passed away. It was really wild. And the woman who's the publisher at Harper Wave, because Harper Wave is an imprint of HarperCollins, so it's under the HarperCollins umbrella. But Karen Rinaldi helped. She was Anthony Bourdain's publisher on Kitchen Confidential.
Oh wow!
And Kitchen Confidential, I'm sure I speak for many of us, has been, probably some of us, our first industry book that we ever read about how to get into the life and be in the life. So that was an incredibly special moment. And that happened like kind of at the end of 3 years working on it. And then we spent the next 2 years, dialing this sucker in. You got to keep doing it. Do yours too, because it's just free advertising. Because right now we're not on book tours. This is the only way we can sell our books.
Right now, it really is.
It really
so
is.
I agree with you. Like you were saying earlier, that you can never see yourself as an entrepreneur. In the beginning, it's only been in the last 6 months, and like 5 companies later that I'm like, I would class myself as a hospitality entrepreneur. My business is hospitality driven between the media company and a few other things. How do you balance it all out? Like between, obviously you've got great people at Varnish in the venues that you have, but you've got multi venues across the country. And then you've got stuff that's specific for LA. How do you balance it off? Do you have a team? Because I always get asked, do you have like about my team? And I'm like, I don't have a team.
Well, okay, I'm gonna just rewind just a little bit here, but like the moment that I really think that I went, okay, I'm an entrepreneur is when I put my website together, because I was like, fuck, I need a place to catch all this. People keep asking me, and then there are all these requests, and I was like, nah. But I think the spirit of wanting to open places has always been for there's a need in a community, there's a need for the community, and you know, I don't want to sound Pollyanna, but like that's really important. If you don't look at where you want to open a place or see that, oh my God, they need food here, we should open up the saloon here in the high desert because there's only one other place where people can get food. If that isn't the thing that's happening right here, then you shouldn't do this business, because as you know, it's way too fucking hard. Now, to get to your question of do you have a team, I think it's incredibly important to share the pie, the ownership pie, and to align yourself with people that are smarter than you in certain areas so that you can learn from that. It's so much more like, granted, I did the Varnish with 2 other masterminds, and I was the young guy. I'd never opened a place before. So Sasha Petreske and Sed Moses. And of course I was from the Sasha family, and I'd learned all these things from Sasha and from Joe Schwartz and Sammy and Mickey and Richie Bocata, who was coming up at the same time. Like, they were just wonderful people in that family. So in terms of cocktails and process, I learned so much from them. But Sed Moses, he was our linchpin because he understood real estate. He understood budgets. He understood how to deal with general contractors and subs. And that was a really exciting part in the book, is chronicling all that. So I think it's really important to align yourself and to share the pie with partners that are going to bring out the best in you, but also are going to bring their best to the table. And secondly, you want a lawyer. You want to make sure to get a good lawyer and a good contract. Now, I'm really fortunate because my dad is a lawyer. He was an SEC lawyer, so he did a lot of corporate law, but just on a completely, it's total nepotism. But like my dad, and it's actually really wonderful because my dad and I, not that we weren't close, I've been always very close to my parents, but we got to have this other extension in our relationship where we would do contracts. And I can tell you, he's done every contract for every project I've been a part of. And wow. That's been a super special part of our relationship. There's a great section in the book about that I absolutely love, and that Deborah and I really loved writing. Teams. You want to make sure that you have a management company, one that you might actually work with or work for. So I am an employee in Pouring with Heart. Now I'm doing training for general managers across the company, but I was a director of cocktail bars for years, and that switch just happened at the beginning of the year. And then, as we all know, everything went to shit, and so we've been in hibernation mode. But I basically was a director of cocktail bars, and the cocktail bars were bars that I was also a partner on, and I would manage the general managers. So every venue had a general manager that we would have weekly meetings, and then of course making sure that you have your management company has a great AP department. And also that you're working with the right PR department. It takes a village. It takes a village to do this. And yeah, if you have one bar, you could probably do a lot of it yourself, and get some help from really close friends who like to drink. You can always get a lawyer and give them a drink tab. You can always get a PR person and give them a drink tab, and that's all real. Like, I'm not knocking that at all. But if you're going to open up more than one bar, you want to start thinking about organizing yourself, or else you're going to spend too much time falling on the sword. And you definitely don't want to go through this process being a martyr, because it's hard enough. And if you wake up every day going like, I'm part of a team of people that is creating jobs, an environment that people are proud to work in, and that we create an environment that guests, if they're locals, if there's the community, if there are people visiting, are really excited to come to, and they feel like they can kind of wiggle around and be more of themselves. Because that's what I think is sexy, when you have a room full of people that are diverse. And I fucking think right now we need to be like, oh my God, like you know, when people say, oh, I'm colorblind with all this stuff that's happening with BLM. Well, fuck no, I'm not colorblind. I see color because I fucking love all the differences that I see around me. And I think that's what I love about bars, is you get all walks of life coming into a bar, and you create that safe space where they can be more of themselves. So if you got those two things, and then the third tent pole, if the business is making money, okay, great. But you can't have that third one if you don't have the first two.
Awesome. What's the plan for the next 6 months? Because I don't want to take up too much of your time. What's the plan for the next 6 months?
Oh boy, the next 6 months. Well, we've been in hibernation. The only two businesses that are open are, which recently opens, the Red Dog Saloon, as well as Penny Pound Ice is still chugging along, because there are bars out there and restaurants that are still doing outside business, which is really wonderful. We've had a lot of our clients be loyal. So managing those two with my partners, and honestly, just taking a little bit of personal time to reflect. I think we all are. I think this is a really good time to think about how we want, what we want the future to look like. How to create equal opportunities within our businesses for all walks of life. How to continue to create safe spaces for all of our guests. And also what that looks like when we come out of this. I don't think it's going to feel normal for, at least a couple years.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, we are going to lose some places. But on a personal level, just really trying to take care of my body and my brain. And on an extremely personal level, like, I've just been in renovation. I'm not at home right now. Like, I'm actually at my best friend Josh's, who lives a mile away from me. He's an actor, an accomplished actor, an acting coach. This is actually his studio where he records auditions for.
I was
other
wondering why
actors
you look so good. I was like,
so,
you look so good. The lighting, the makeup, everything.
I do this all the time, Shawn. So I just thought I'd just sit in my studio chair and have a chat with you. But no, I'm having the floors redone because a year ago there was water damage from the upstairs neighbor, and part of my floor got screwed up. And the way it works with insurance is that they give you the money to replace the entire floor, because it has to be to pre-incident state. And so they gave me a whole bunch of money, and instead of replacing the wood floor, I'm taking it out, grinding and polishing the concrete, and then using the other half of the money to redo my bathroom. So I figured, since I'm not doing anything else but a nice company in one bar, I had some time to always need a project, man. Just
always need a project, man. Always
rip up my loft and my loft in downtown and replace the floor. So there you go.
Well, it was amazing catching up with you, my friend.
Thanks, man.
Throw the book up one more time.
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely.
Throw the book up one more time. Unvarnished. Unvarnished. Give me a look at The Wife Behind the Bar. I need to find a copy here in Canada. I will. I'll definitely find one, and next time we catch up, I want it signed.
Oh, 100%. With pleasure, dude. Thanks, man. I really appreciate catching up with you too. And stay well. And are you open at Clive right now, or are you doing any kind of service?
I literally am going to get off this call. I'm going to go up and freshen up, chuck on my work uniform, drive to work, and drive to work, and then close up tonight. And then do that again tomorrow night. So 2 nights behind the bar. I get giddy on Friday afternoons when I get to do it. But then Saturday morning, I'm like, oh, my body doesn't feel great doing these bar shifts still. So the mind is willing, the body is not.
Oh, I love it. You're doing our Lord's work by getting behind the bar. Really appreciate you for getting
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I'll chat to you really soon.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you guys. Have a good one.